way, it's all good now.
All right, fantastic.
All right, I'll leave it.
Oh yeah, put the corner there. Beautiful. Oh, still there.
Yes, I am. There's a setting. Hi. There's a setting in the top of the screen when you go toward the top, and you could turn off your video and you could turn off your microphone. So when you're in a Hangout, if you need to scratch your nose, you can do that, and then people don't see you scratching your nose.
Okay.
Okay.
We're learning as we're going, David. I'm sure you can see that.
All right.
Can you hear us?
You're in a course called Staying Out of Special Ed Jail?
Yeah, exactly.
So as I said in the email, David, this is a field assignment, and you know, we thought it would be sort of a good stretch for us to interview somebody in a different school district, somebody who's at a different site, who's probably experienced in their career situations where you've had potential legal consequences or even actual legal consequences. So we just like to learn, you know, from you about your experiences and you know, just sort of go from there.
Sure. So, like, just bring up a case and we could talk about it?
Yeah, that'll be good. I'm going to see if we can turn our volume up on you. Let's see.
Okay.
Yep. There you go.
All right.
Okay, good. Well, yeah, no, I have had a few in my career. I'm thinking of one that I had, and this was a family had adopted a kid, and the parents were a little bit older. They were professionals. Dad was a lawyer. And so they had adopted a kid, and the kid had behavioral needs. And he had he was not successful in a private school setting, so he was coming to our school. He was coming in as a kindergartner, and his behavioral needs, his intelligence was a little bit above average. So he was a sharp kid, but I think he had attention deficit. It was very difficult for him to sit still. He would interrupt class continually, where the teacher might read a book and he might say, well, I've learned about trains, and then he might just walk right up to the teacher and like go to page 6 in the book and say, this is a such and such train. And those things would happen at the drop of a hat. Sometimes he would be aggressive towards peers, more not in he was seeking them out, but more like if he wanted the blocks, he would grab the blocks, and if the other kid didn't give the blocks, he would hit the kid. So those types of things. So we knew that we had something on our hands, and so going into special ed law, I knew that he was a kindergartner, and I knew he was bright, and I didn't know that I would have adverse effect on a kindergartner, because did he know his colors? Did he know his letters? Did he know those sort of academic kindergarten things? Yes. But I got to think about his age, and his age, he was able to be evaluated under not the age 5 and up criteria for school age special ed, but he was able to be evaluated for early education. And the criteria for that is entirely different. That you look at developmental milestones in a different evaluation tool. And I knew that if you looked at his ability to have social interactions, he also wasn't toileting himself at that point. So I knew that there were developmental milestones that he was missing, and we qualified him under that so that we could get an IEP started. Because I knew that he would need a one-on-one to be successful, and he would need behavioral planning to be successful. But I didn't want to straight pay for that out of my budget if we could get him into the special ed system. The case got so we did that, and we had a one-on-one with him. And another aspect in that case was we found that sometimes we needed to take him to an alternative space. And the parents, well-meaning, they wanted the best for their kid, but I think they had seen documentaries about, rubber rooms in schools. So they were very wary of this. And they wanted to see the space and make sure that it was a safe space. So one of the things I had to think about in that is, I'm forgetting the term here, do we seclude kids? And I wanted to be really clear with the father that we do not seclude kids. I'm personally not in favor of that. And, the difference in secluding a kid is that they are locked in a room. They, reasonably believe they cannot come out. So either like you've locked them and you've closed the door, and I know that there are cases where you might need to seclude a kid where, honest to goodness, for everyone's safety, he just needs to be in a room where he can't break anything, and, other people shouldn't be there with him. But this was not the case. So it was about being clear about those definitions of what is seclusion, what is restraint, what is the use of a timeout space, and making those really clear to the parents, because they were worried about what they had seen, and also they were savvy enough to talk with people and say, well, you know what, I don't think you're allowed to do this. I don't want my child taken out of the class. And so this is where you're balancing the school's need to keep a safe and orderly learning environment.
Can I back you up just a second, David? So you used the early ed evaluation, the birth to whatever, five, I guess. And then when you qualified him, was he qualified in social emotional? What area was his disability decided to be in?
I think, I don't exactly recall. I think it was just developmental delay.
Developmental delay, okay.
Yep, general developmental delay.
But then things were built around, obviously, around the socialization and behavior and that kind of stuff.
That's right. All of his goals were behavioral goals.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so you were talking about the space, about the...
and the parents were, savvy enough and kind of refusing that accommodation, right?
That's right. But, so it was having a number of IEP meetings, and we did get our special ed director involved to, make it clear that, we were using least restrictive environment, that we only had him there when it was necessary. And, the father did ask a good question, how long is my kid there? So, it brings in the documentation, which you would want in a case like that. A school really should figure out, okay, if a kid's using this space, how often is it happening? What's the length of the time? So you could always adjust the programming, because you could, a school could just end up sending kids there all the time, more than necessary, and that's not helping them. How can you practice getting along with other kids if you're always in this other space?
Yeah. You run into a problem with least restrictive there for both that kid and the other kid, so...
Well, right, and yeah, that does come up too, because the other parents, a few occasions where he hits a kid on the playground or hits a kid in the classroom, and I understand if you ask parents, well, what's the acceptable number of times that your kid would get hit in the head, and the answer would be 0. I don't want that to happen at all. So, you had to. You're balancing the needs of the general population and this student. And if a parent says, well, how come Johnny hit my little girl? And you have to explain it the best you can, keeping the confidentiality. and not saying, that this kid's on a behavioral plan and et cetera, et cetera. For a school administrator, it always leaves you in the less than satisfying situation where you could say, Mrs. Parent, I can tell you that it absolutely was addressed, but you can't say how. You can't say were they suspended. You can't say, what happened. You just say, we followed our procedures and this has been addressed. The case got more complicated when we started to review the IEP. The parents had, at their own expense, had gotten an outside evaluation of the child. So now this is when the child is in first grade, and they've had an outside evaluation. And the outside evaluation, the evaluator did it in a bit of a non-standard way. When you do an evaluation, you should do it in a routine way and do all of the subtests, but the person didn't score it on the subtests that measure attention. So they came back with this score, and the evaluator saying, I think this kid is in the clinical genius range. And he was a very bright boy. But he had above average intelligence. He didn't have to be in the genius category. Particularly, that didn't match other evaluations that he had gotten using cognitive scores. But now we have the parents saying, so we want programming that will address this need. We don't feel that our child has attention deficit or anything like that. We think that our child is a genius and he's bored. That's why. And the recommendations from this outside evaluator were essentially that, there would be essentially another teacher who would create an additional enrichment curriculum for him. The parents had done their own research on this, and they did find in some states, I think Colorado was the state that they cited, where you could have an IEP for gifted children. Vermont does not have that criteria. Mm-hmm. You don't have gifted IEPs in Vermont. So, the task was to make this clear to the parent and weigh the different evaluations. And, I don't know how else to say it, to say the evaluation that you paid for was done in a non-standard way. We're going to give more weight to the other evaluations here. We will look for, as we would for all of our kids, differentiate. I mean, if the kid's in first grade and he can read all of the Harry Potters, well, good. Then we're not going to have him, use a primer with jump spot jump. We can teach him with a more advanced book. But they were expecting more because they had researched and had found criteria from other states. So you had to think of what explain to them what the Vermont criteria is. We did end up hiring a one-on-one from a local mental health agency who could work with the student and make a very tailored behavioral program for the student. The student saw some success with this, but it was not totally successful.
Can I just ask a quick question? So you've reached, and we've been in these situations too. So you've reached now this sort of evaluation in hand situation where the parents have got the outside evaluation. You've had the early childhood evaluation. They don't sync at that point. So it looks like you were trying to create a connection around pieces of both, maybe, so you could have a meeting maybe in the middle. Is that sort of where you were going, or? Yeah,
exactly. To respect and honor what they were bringing to the table, but also, keeping in mind our resources and what we could do and what we felt was necessary.
Right.
And we really felt that the child had behavioral needs that needed to be addressed, and he would, if you could address those, he would be more happy and successful in the classroom. The parents did not want to go the medical route, addressing the ADD. I realized you can't force that, and if that was the situation with my kid, I would be wary of giving my kid medication. But this really was pretty extreme behavior where it was difficult for the child to be in the classroom. It did get to the point where some aggressive behavior happened in different situations, and again, you have the other parents saying, "Wait a minute, this kid's been in my kid's class for a number of years now, and again, they've gotten hit in some situation," and the school started to make the argument. And when I say the school, in doing this, I'm not just doing this on my own. I'm doing this, in consultation with my special educator, with the school psychologist, with the director of special education, and also keeping the superintendent informed, because this looks like something that's going to go all the way to due process. So you certainly don't want your superintendent surprised that you have a case going to due process. And we, after consulting with my team, we decided that we would make the recommendation that the child be placed in the alternative school that our district has, and that is something that the parents hands down refused, and they said that they would go to due process. And this is where you have to say, based on, we had gone through the process, we had documented things, we could, is any school district perfect? No, but we could clearly show that, in good faith, we had tried to have the child be successful in the regular classroom. So we felt, okay, if it's due process, go for it. We felt confident about that. And ultimately, they ended up not going to due process, but homeschooling their child.
How long did that homeschooling last?
He's not been back to public school.
Okay.
So it's been a couple of years now, so I'm not exactly sure where this child is at. But it's just a case where you have to consider all of those things. How can I qualify this kid? How can I get the resources? What's least restrictive? And then, knowing that you had everything documented, that if the parents, who are quite intelligent folks, and one of them is a lawyer, if they say we're going to do process, that you feel confident, well, all right then, let's go to the next step.
Right.
Yeah.
I think the thing we did learn in Dr. Reardon's class that you mentioned, David, was that it always seems to be a very positive thing when schools and school districts have that best act in good faith, was the term you used.
Yeah.
And that seems to be something that, it looks like from the very beginning here all the way through, the school was trying to mediate, and the school was trying to create a team and work to help the child. Would you agree with that? Is that something you've experienced in other cases or other situations?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it never would work if it's an adversarial relationship.
Yeah.
Well, this has been really, really helpful, David.
Yeah.
Really, thank you for picking the example you did. It had a lot of pieces of things we studied this summer, and it looks like it had an outcome that looks like it worked out for the family and the young man. And I don't have any other questions. Do you have any more?
I have one, David. Did you guys ever consider when the parents did the outside evaluation? I mean, it's this district's decision whether they're going to accept an outside evaluation or not.
That's right.
We don't have to.
That's right.
That's, so the fact that you guys, it sounded like you were trying to maintain the relationship with the parents by not so much accepting the outside evaluation, but taking it into somewhat of a consideration.
Right. So, you know, and that's when we wrote the evaluation report and our psychologist looked at it, you know, she wrote the report saying, okay, we have the evaluations that we conducted, and here's what we know, this score, that score, and we sort of took this other evaluation in the what else do we know?
Okay, yeah.
You know, what else do we know about the child? So
Right.
it was a way to honor it in a way, but saying, okay, we're trusting our numbers, but we also heard there was another evaluation that said X, Y, Z. Here's what we're seeing in ours. Because we knew we couldn't go with the, I don't know what it was. You know, he didn't have 160 IQ. You can't leave big chunks of the evaluation out. You know,
Right.
we're not trying to disrespect the kid, but he wasn't a genius, and you know that's just really sort of a red herring taking us down the wrong road. So we know we couldn't accept it, but we used it in the, you know, what else do we know about Johnny section.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thanks.
Okay. Well,
Well,
hey, good luck with your course and have an awesome school year. I heard on Monday it's August, so oh my gosh.
I know.
Yeah, I know. It's gone fast, gone way too fast. But listen, we really appreciate it, Dave. And you too have a very good end of your summer, too.
All right, great. Thanks so much. You guys take care.
Bye,
Thanks.
David. Thanks.